You're listening to Synergy to Synastry, the podcast where two corporate girlies called to follow their intuition take you on a journey of self-exploration through metaphysical modalities.
I'm Christine, intuitive coach and clairvoyant.
And I'm Renee, psychic intuitive and astrologer.
We're excited that you're here and honored to be your spiritual guides. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen. It helps listeners find our show, plus it automatically enters you into our raffles to win a free psychic reading.
Now, let's get into the episode.
I'm curious how you learned astrology, because for me with human design, I kind of kept a bunch of charts up. Every time I learned about a new characteristic or part of the chart, I would say, oh, my dad has that, or oh, my best friend has that. And it would kind of help me remember what those features were. I'm curious if you did the same thing while you were learning astrology.
I feel like I'm going to be learning astrology forever because it's so complicated. There's so many different modalities and tools that you can use. But I do the same thing that you're describing. So I have an app on my phone. If I was listening to a podcast or reading about something, maybe a specific marker, then I will go into everybody's charts and look at them. So I'll kind of rattle them off to myself and then think, oh, okay, that does make a lot of sense. Like if I interpret it from what I know about that person or what I know about myself. And that's even without sitting and talking to any of them. I could use my knowledge of them as a person to help me better understand the application, really.
This is a beautiful segue into today's topic because it's like we're always practicing, and you and I as nerds are always thinking of different ways to practice. So for today's episode, we're going to be analyzing fictional characters.
One of the reasons why we wanted to do this is because it's a very low stakes way of learning. Because it's not like this character is going to come alive and tell you that's right, that's wrong, or whatever. Like you're just doing it as an exercise for yourself. Or it's a nice way to kind of interact with other people, maybe who are also studying it. You can kind of pick it apart. So that's a little bit of what we're doing now.
We did a small scale version of this for Taylor, aka Taylor Swift, if you're not in the know, in our third Void episode. If you listen to our second Void episode on romantasy, you know that we have a love of books and reading. Today, we're going to merge those two ideas together by doing numerology, human design, and astrology readings for book, movie, and TV characters that we know and love.
Hopefully this inspires you to think about the makeup of the characters in your favorite stories on a deeper level.
Before we get started, I feel like I need to express this caveat. I wanted to do Daenerys Targaryen of Game of Thrones and Katniss Everdeen, but they are born so far in the past and future that I couldn't generate a human design chart. I ended up using ChatGPT to help me support identifying birth data for the characters that you'll hear me talk about in this episode. And as a reminder, for human design, you need to have birth date, time, and a real location in order to do this.
For the characters that I ended up choosing, I had to go down Reddit rabbit holes to figure out the locations because both of them were fictional towns. So it was people that did approximations, all of this research to say, well, this is probably somewhere between this actual town and that actual town. And I would use that data to give them locations.
This is so funny because I feel like a project we thought was going to be super simple. Most of the research time was figuring out a legit birth date, time, and location.
All right, Christine, why don't you start us off with your first character?
Linked in the show notes, either the human design site that we use to pull up a chart or the astrology site we use to pull up a chart. Right now, we're going to be using human design. So if you want to pause for a second and pull up the chart and follow along, you can. Or you can just listen to the soothing sounds of my voice. The first character I chose was Lisbeth Salander from the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. I don't know if you guys remember the series when it came out, but it was a huge deal. Everybody was super into it. They were bricks of books, as Renee likes to call these extra long books. And the writing was so tedious, but I loved these books. The birth date that I used for her is April 30th, 1984 at 2 a.m. in Stockholm, Sweden. Our girl Lisbeth Salander is a projector. And if you remember from last season, projectors are innately sensitive to and wise about other people. They're not meant to be consistent doers, and their gift is in how they see things, not in how much they can do. They're keen at seeing things in a new and different way or from a different angle. They can feel good to be around because they make people feel deeply seen. But if those people are not ready to be seen, it can feel a little uncomfortable and like a little intense. Lisbeth definitely has a good read on people, and it's interesting that her boss thinks she's only capable of temp work, or her second guardian thinks that she's mentally unwell. I feel like she's just a misunderstood projector. I also feel that the people she interacts with are not ready to see what she sees in other people, which is, of course, how we get such a great book. The second layer of Lisbeth's human design is her strategy, and her strategy is wait for the invitation. Projectors are designed to be invited in by others and recognized for their gifts before committing their energy or sharing their gifts with others. They're not meant to initiate, and initiating in the wrong environment can be exhausting at best and mentally challenging at worst. It's okay to create something and make it public, but wait for somebody to see what that information is and say to you, hey, I'm really interested in that. Can you tell me more? And I think we definitely see this in Lisbeth's personality. She's going to tell you the truth whether you want to hear it or not. So it's better that she's invited in by people to share that truth rather than just put it out there. Because as we know, sometimes people don't react well to what they don't want to hear, and it can cause someone to question themselves. You know, Lisbeth Salander is painted as this mentally unwell person. I think her brain just works differently. Okay, so the next two layers are her profile and her authority. Lisbeth has a splenic authority. This is a very quiet and intuitive way of making decisions. So Lisbeth is highly perceptive. Those with this authority depend on their intuition to make the most aligned decisions. She also has a 3-5 profile. There is no failing. There is trying something, and if it doesn't work, I learn from it and I improve the next time. I feel like Lisbeth seems to take risks when she's working on a case, but that's also her process. And then the 5 in her profile also speaks to how people place expectations on her or expect her to be something she isn't, maybe sometimes even put her on a pedestal. And while this can be great for going undercover, it's no coincidence that she teams up with a trusted friend in Blomquist who sees her for who she is. She doesn't have to worry that he's placing unreal expectations on her because he knows who she is. And I think people with a 5 in their profile, me included, need to have these type of people in our lives bring us back to reality, right? We're not what people think we are. We are who we are. She is a life path 2. And if we remember, 2 is part of the business numbers in numerology. Biggest lesson for this life path is that it's important to set boundaries. They're not meant to fix everyone. Lisbeth has an innate sense of justice, and she'll do anything for those she deeply cares about, but there has to be a boundary somewhere, otherwise she'll burn out. And this is something I think we see her struggle with throughout the series. Renee, how do you feel that interpretation went?
I read the first book and I watched the movie because they were supposed to do a whole movie series and something got pulled on that. Maybe it's one that I'll go back to. But it checks out with my memory of her as an individual. I just don't remember all the detailed, plot points.
I don't want to add any more bricks to your TBR,
Yeah.
but I do recommend the rest of the books.
I gotta finish my current brick series first.
Okay, Renee, I am very excited for the next character you're going to talk about. Please jump right in.
Talk about a misunderstood character. I was so excited that I was able to work this into the episode. Christine and I are both dancing in our chairs to talk about Niklaus. Who's Niklaus? I know Christine would love to be able to say that he's just some guy she met at the gym with Brad Pitt's face and Jesus's abs. But he's actually the hybrid Klaus Michelson from the Vampire Diaries and Originals spinoff. I didn't have birth times for either of my individuals, so I went with the default, a 12 noon, because if you don't have the birth time, then you can't properly set which one is the ascendant. So as I'm giving the overview of my charts, I will not be sharing an ascendant because it is unknown. And I won't be able to speak to which house each of these placements are in, which obviously adds another layer of color. This is why when you're getting a reading done, it's very important to have all of the details, but I can still talk about what is there and what I can see based on this totally fictional, amazing character that we love. He is old. That's the long and short. People have done a lot of in-depth research on the Vampire Diaries lore to figure out the ins and outs when each of the characters were born. And what I was seeing was two different dates. One was March 23rd, 980 AD, and the other was October 30th. And ultimately, I looked at both of the charts, and in my knowledge of this character, decided to go with the October 30th because I felt like it had more components that aligned with his personality. I was doing the Reddit research, and it seems like the approximation of where the fictional Mystic Falls in Virginia would be is a place called Livingston. So that's what I entered for his chart. Based on his October 30th chart, he is a Scorpio sun. This means that he is highly emotional, dark, secretive, sultry, and has a fixation on power. Anyone that knows Niklaus knows this to be true. This is his vibe. This is his energy. This is his ego, how he walks into a room. He is very power-oriented, very dark and mysterious, sultry, flirtatious when he wants to be. Claraline, RIP to that relationship. He is an Aries moon in this chart. I was looking for him. I was like, if he doesn't have Aries somewhere in his chart, I feel like we have an issue. And obviously for that March 23rd, that would have made him an Aries sun. But I ended up going with this chart for other reasons, but he at least has the Aries moon here, which indicates him being a hothead and having a really quick trigger and short fuse, which is also incredibly accurate. In combination with that Scorpio sun, Scorpio and Aries are both Mars ruled. And this is a very Martian guy, very aggressive, very impulsive. Further, he has a Scorpio stellium. A stellium in astrology means that you have 3 or more placements in a single sign. So what he has is Mercury retrograde. I'll talk about that more after. His south node, Neptune, and of course the sun, which I already mentioned. Mercury refers to your mind and how you communicate. Having a retrograde Mercury means he was born when the planet was, to our eye, moving backwards, even though that's, not how science works. Visually, it looks like it's moving backwards in the sky. And that would suggest, one, thoughts, reflections, how his mind operates in the Scorpio lens, again, being secretive, darker topics, heavier things, also intuitive as well. But the retrograde piece, meaning potentially he has some difficulty in his communication, getting his, message across, how he's approaching things, not being kind of in a straight line. Similarly, because Scorpio deals with truth-seeking and secrets, it could signal struggles with honesty and his communication with others. For anyone who's watched either of the shows, the amount of times that any of the originals, as an example, you're just like, why aren't they telling each other things? Just say that. It's because they're always keeping secrets from one another. They're trying to one-up each other for power. And Klaus does this, I think, the most of the whole family. He also has a Taurus stellium that includes Jupiter retrograde, Mars retrograde, and his north node. All of this can suggest struggles in having luck or being slow to action, which of course is fascinating because you would say, okay, well, why would he be slow to action when we're saying he's somebody that's impulsive? So it could just mean having difficulty getting things to be stable. And if he is always rocking the boat, always doing things, always making changes, always pulling a fast one on people, there are very few points in his entire arc where there is any peace, relaxation, and stability. This is not a guy. I mean, he'll unwind, every once in a while, but for the most part, he's always cooking something up and always up to no good. He has his Scorpio stellium, which I mentioned before, and the ruler of it is Mars, which is in Taurus. So inherently what this is doing is it's linking those two signs and the energy within them. If we knew his house information, we would also say it's linking those house areas. Taurus and Scorpio are sister signs, which inherently means that they're along the same theme, but they also are carrying oppositional energy to one another. The ruler of a sign wants to be in that sign, and it really does not want to be in the sister sign because it's unhappy there. So it's also telling you that this retrograde ruler is in a sign it doesn't want to be in, so it's extra dysfunctional, contributing likely to some of that impulsivity. For the North Node in Taurus and the South Node in Scorpio, this is indicating a shedding of comfort with darkness. He has dark impulses, and actually moving towards a life and embodiment of comfort and ease. He's always thinking of the next chess piece to move, the next thing he wants to conquer. And it's a little bit difficult for him to just kind of sit because he always is paranoid and thinks somebody's like coming after him. He has a Sagittarius Venus, which suggests relationship connections that are international. So people from different countries or backgrounds, we know that is true. And or they're having some sort of alignment with their beliefs or what their interests are. Because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, so it's like wanting to learn and expand. Can they find common ground based on what they like to talk about, learn about, and travel? And with the Caroline relationship, that was something that he would say, oh, I'll take you around the world and we'll travel together. So that's a really perfect example of this type of placement. And finally, he has his Saturn in Libra. And that suggests him experiencing many, many tough life lessons in his relationships, setting boundaries and creating harmony. This is not a guy who's creating harmony. He tends to lean into all of the aforementioned energy. He's trying to create peace by asserting dominance and control over other people. And that's not peace, because then everyone's mad and then they're fighting him. And then it leads to other battles that just didn't need to happen. We could have just sat down and had a nice conversation. So that's what I came up with on the high level for the astrology. And then his life path is a 3. And 3s are known to be creative, loyal, relationship focused, but have some sort of risk of imbalance in those relationships, and be storytellers. I laughed when I read this because I was like, this is so spot on. The creativity piece I didn't talk about before, but we see Klaus throughout the series painting. He's a very talented painter. He's been doing this for hundreds of years. The loyalty, always and forever, that's the saying that they have with this family. They have a very, very deep, intense loyalty to each other, the people that they care about, even if they fight with them, even if they dagger them, knock them unconscious every once in a while. It's still about the family. The relationship focus, risk of imbalance, that's the same thing we were talking about with the power dynamics. Even though he cares, the center of his life are these relationships. They often go awry. And then I thought the storytelling piece was kind of funny because there's different points where he is sharing, in a cheeky way. Oh, back in, 1920 or, 1045 or whatever. Like he'll just share little stories and then coaxing that person, teasing them with information with the truth telling. So I thought that was kind of a funny piece because I wouldn't have thought of him as a storyteller. But in looking back, I was like, oh, I guess that does kind of make sense. So Christine, what do you think? Because I know you love Niklaus.
I think this is really spot on, especially with the Scorpio sun, and like he hurts his family in so many ways, but that's also his family. Like ride or die, that's my family. It's a very disempowered Scorpio sun. And the other thing it had me thinking with his North Node and his South Node and Taurus and Scorpio, we humans have a very short life expectancy compared to an immortal vampire to learn the lessons we came here to learn. Imagine being immortal and having to constantly go around the rising staircase in a circle and go over lessons over and over and over.
Gosh.
That's what I was thinking of. I'm like, oh my, this vampire is immortal. How many times did he have to learn a different version of the same lesson? And these are like deep rooted, tough lessons. It did make me appreciate that we are not immortal for this reason. I can't imagine having to learn the same lessons over and over for an unending period of time.
It's so true. Even for perfection years, like, okay, every time you have a 7th house year, you're learning about your relationships. How many hundreds of times has he done that?
Yeah.
To know this tool would have been designed for us to be mortal. When you apply it to someone that is immortal, how does that maybe even change some of the interpretations of it? I'm coming at it from the lens of, okay, if this is just a regular person.
Right. Renee, did you know about Buy Me a Coffee before I brought it up to you?
I had heard about it on another podcast, but I hadn't looked into it before.
Well, Buy Me a Coffee is basically a very easy way for people to support creators in the content they're making without having to subscribe. We set up a page for the podcast. You can just go to buymeacoffee.com or look for the link in our show notes and buy a coffee for Renee and I. So each coffee costs $5, or I think you can customize the amount you want to send to us. When you buy a coffee for Renee and I, you're helping support the podcast so that we can continue to make it, because we don't make any money off of this.
It's not even just that it would support us like buying readings or purchasing readings from us or digital products would, but this money goes directly to enhancing the podcast experience, creating merch or offerings or anything that's specific to this audience. Ultimately, you can consider it like our website. It has details on all the episodes, different links, so where you can listen on Spotify, Apple. Of course, you can listen on other places as well, but it also includes the episode graphics. So as an example, if you don't have Instagram, which is where we usually share, this gives you another way to look at our infographics that we cite, any images that we create for the episodes. And it's another way that you can contact us in addition to our email.
Exactly. So don't delay. Buy us a coffee today. You don't have to keep that, but I thought it was great.
It's that time again, everybody. Can you believe it? We're already approaching the start of fall, or autumn, as the fancy people say. And we are doing our second annual Equinox raffle. In order to participate, all you have to do is head over to Spotify and leave a comment on any of our episodes, or visit our podcast on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. We'll take all previous entries plus any net new ones, throw them all in a randomizer, and use that to pick a winner for this raffle. You will win a 60-minute 2-on-1 reading with Christine and I. We will be announcing the winner on the actual Equinox Day, which is September 22nd. Make sure to get yours in by September 10th, because we will be selecting and recording the winner to be announced a little over a week later. Thank you for supporting the podcast, whether it's through a coffee, through a review, through sharing with your friends, liking our posts on social. If you want to help the podcast grow, this is a really great way to do it, because your reviews help other people find us.
And we want to be found.
All right, we're back from our break, and I've got my second character. Still in TV. Didn't do this on purpose, it just turned out this way. But we're switching genres, we're switching networks. I'm going to be talking about Leslie Knope of Parks and Rec fame. January 18th, 1975, Eagleton, Indiana, and the quote-unquote real location, is it Muncie? In my brain, I want it to be like Munchie. Like
I just want to point out, this is the fun of reading books and not the audio, because how you just read Muncie as Munchie, that's how I read kale as charcoal.
Leslie is a Capricorn sun. She's a leader. She's highly dedicated to her work. So she is running that Parks and Rec department. She's a big champion, advocate, wants to get things done. She is also an Aries moon. I'm coming from learning about Klaus and then hearing her, I'm like, wait, what? But I was looking her up because I haven't seen the show in a bit, but I was like, well, maybe she does have kind of a sharper edge to her. And I was seeing people saying that she has some moments where she gets like a little bit pissed. And she has a short fuse, but it also could be indicating how passionate she is. which we know is true. So being very assertive, I'm going to get this done. We're going to do this. Further pushing the mission that she has as that Capricorn sun. Speaking of Mars rulership, Mars in Sagittarius. This can indicate that she is motivated by and seeks out making big change, taking actions to have that impact in her small town to make things better. So it's like a big vision and wanting to act in alignment with that vision, even if others don't believe it. She has her North Node also in Sagittarius and therefore a South Node in Gemini. This indicates her being naturally chatty and going through a lifetime of learning to apply her ideas that she comes up with and leaning into idealism. And I would say she comes across as a pretty idealistic person. The amount of times people are like, oh, that can't be done. That can't be done. So she is acting in alignment with that North Node in Sagittarius when she's like, well, I think we can do that. Jupiter in Pisces. This is a very big, sensitive heart, creative, thinking outside the box. How do we get this done? Because again, she's very mission focused. She has her Mercury and Venus in Aquarius. Aquarius is representing the collective. It's very humanitarian. So someone who's running a Parks and Rec department, you are creating events, services, programs to support your community. She's trying to cut through the red tape hierarchy that we would see in more of a Capricorn structured society and wanting opportunities to be given to everyone. When you have Venus and Mercury there, that would indicate that she is thinking about innovation and improving the community, wanting people to work together towards a common goal. Also wanted to add, Venus sometimes can represent information about your partner that you end up with. And for anyone who knows the relationship that she got in with Ben, played by Adam Scott, she met through her community work. So he was an auditor and he was checking systems as well. Aquarius loves systems. So he had the energy of Aquarius and she met him through her community work. I thought that was a nice little nod. She has her Saturn in Cancer. This means that she's learning a lifetime of tough lessons in setting boundaries. One might say some of the work-life balance, because she's living and breathing this work, or even the emotional investment in it, the disappointment if something isn't panning out, plus having excessive caretaking. So if she's always trying to help others and doing things for others, then she could be at risk of burning herself out, not taking care of herself, not stepping away, overly investing, setting herself up for disappointment. And this idea of her work being her family, being so invested in it that it's fundamental to who she is and what she's doing, and her work as in responsibility, Saturn representing responsibility. And then for her life path, she is a 5, which captures freedom. That's all of that Sagittarius stuff we were talking about. Fun, playfulness, being adventurous, and highly passionate. And I would say that aligns with everything that I was just sharing. Part of why we wanted to highlight the numerology is just to bring in another modality that we have talked about on the show before. But even if, quote unquote, all it's doing is just completely echoing what's coming through with the human design and what's coming through the astrology, it's showing you how all of these different tools can work together. Even when they're developed separately and in a vacuum, they have all of these overlapping archetypes. And it's just more and more validation and affirmation of what they're representing for an individual, for you or for these fictional people.
Her chart is like a spitting image of her, the way you were describing it. And what really fascinated me was her Aquarius, Venus, and Mercury. How much out of the box thinking does this woman do?
Yeah.
And she loves in a different way, and she does business in a different way. And I just think it fully supports her Mars and Sagittarius in such a beautiful way. Oh, I love everything about it. Okay, friends, the next character and the final character that we're going to talk about is Tony Stark from Iron Man. I will preface this with there was some conflict when I was looking up where he was born, depending on if we were basing this off of the Marvel movies or if we were basing this off of the comic book series. I chose to base it off the Marvel movies because I watched all of those and I unfortunately have not read the comic books. So I guess I'll add those to my TBR. We are going to view Tony Stark through the lens of human design. His birthday is May 29th, 1970. He was born at 9:30 a.m. per ChatGPT, kind of sourcing together a bunch of details. The location we finally settled on was Manhasset, New York. Within the Marvel movies, there's no question that he was born on the North Shore of Long Island. Manhasset is one of the towns that was in question. I ended up on Manhasset because I thought that was a better choice for him. So those of us who understand human design can fully imagine Tony Stark as a manifesting generator. This is his type, the first layer of who he is. Manifesting generators are quick, multi-passionate doers. If that doesn't describe Tony Stark, I will eat my hat. They bring ideas to life quickly and powerfully. If anyone remembers the time he made the Iron Man suit in a cave with like a toothpick and a rubber band, when they are lit up by what they do, people can't help but want to be around them. They have a very buzzy energy. And it's natural for them to try on many different things throughout their life, and they might actually feel quite uncomfortable if forced to only do one thing. They thrive when they're given a sense of freedom to shift directions and reinvent themselves as they go. Tony, coming from a family of money, he has the freedom to shift in whatever direction he wants. That is a very comfortable place for a Manny Gen. Renee can attest to that more than I can. She's nodding as I say that. The next layer of his human design is his strategy. And his strategy is wait to respond, which kind of sounds off for Tony, but hear me out. Those with this authority are constantly pulling opportunities towards themselves. Generators and manifestors usually have this authority, and they are magnetic. They're meant to wait for an opportunity that shows up in their orbit and lights them up. That's their sign to go after it. They're meant to be driven by what their gut responds to and not what they should do. So I think about, Manny Gen just walking throughout their day and all of a sudden an opportunity to work for this new company or work as a superhero falls into Tony Stark's lap. And he's like, you know what? That excites me. I'm going to go after it. That's sort of the wait to respond strategy. The next piece of his human design is his profile and his authority. So he's known as a 3-5 emotional. Manifesting generators with an emotional authority are meant to listen to their gut over time. So if something lights you up, maybe sleep on it and feel into all the possibilities of a decision. The goal is to try not to make a decision from an emotional place, but rather to think through all of the options and make a decision from a more consistent space. Tony seems like he makes decisions willy-nilly, and I think that's just his manifesting generator energy that does things quickly. But if you notice in any major decisions, which is how this authority works, he kind of sits and mulls things over. He may talk to people about it. He may sit in his little studio. I call it his little studio. It's like a beautiful $1 million expanse of computers. But he may sit there and go through a whole bunch of possibilities of what could happen before he makes a decision on something. And that's the emotional authority that we're talking about. His profile is also a 3-5, which, Renee, do you have this as well? Yep, Renee has this as well. So Renee is Tony Stark.
Almost. I have a different authority, but otherwise everything you said I have.
Oh, that's wild. So Tony also has a 3-5 profile, and I think the 3 in his profile is very apparent. Forgiveness is more than saying sorry. He's going to do the action and then apologize later. Tony, for the most part, doesn't care what people think of him, but he does have Pepper Potts, who sees him for who he is and not as the world sees him, and I think that speaks to the 5 in his profile as well. So him and Liz Salander have the same profile, the 3-5, and you can see how it manifests in different ways based on the other parts of the human design that are layered on top. And lastly, in terms of numerology, his life path number is a 6. 6s are part of the creative group of numbers, and Tony is certainly that. 6s are also natural caretakers, and while he may not seem like the mothering type, he does make some pretty ultimate sacrifices for the ones he loves. So Renee, I don't know how into the Marvel movies you are, I went through a phase where I watched them all because my nephews were watching them. So I got really into it and way more emotional about it than I thought. Tony Stark, I just think, is a beautiful character. I'm curious what your perspective is.
I have seen the Iron Man movies. I've seen some Marvel movies here and there. I stopped watching them because I want to do one of those big watches where you go through the whole thing. So I'll have to actually do that at some point because they're going to just keep coming out and then it's never ending. Robert Downey Jr. has just like such a way about him. He's a really interesting person and a great interview. I love seeing him in interviews. So it is funny in hearing some of the commonalities. And I like that you pointed out how he has some traits, quote unquote, that are in common with Lisbeth, but then how they are represented differently. Same thing for me, because I have similar components, but then naturally not all of my chart is the same as his. We're in different fields, we're in different industries, so we're not doing and expressing in the same way. As an aside, I also was realizing as you got through with his that you picked two people who ended up being 3/5s, and I picked two people who ended up being Aries moons.
I know, and I didn't mean to do that.
I didn't either.
It was very hard, actually, because most people are generators or manifesting generators, to find an alternative character. Once I got to Lisbeth, I was like, whatever, I don't care about the rest. She's a projector. Let's go with it.
What was my tune? It was like,
I mean, you could do a different one every time.
This one is just snoring.
No, that's not it. I'm not going to do sound effects. I bow out. Dreams, folks. We're on to the dream segment. This dream I had was really cool because it turned out to be a premonition dream. On Sundays, I spend time scheduling out my week, preparing for the week, making sure I know what I'm doing, any meetings I have, etc. That Tuesday, I was supposed to meet up with a friend from out of town who was going to be in New York, and we had made plans to meet up. The dream that I had that night, I was driving on the highway, and I was coming up to a lane, and on the left side, there were like 3 lanes merging in. If anybody has taken the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey, it was that sort of situation. Her car kept moving 1 lane over, getting closer to me. Next thing you know, we're both in the same 2 lanes, the right 2 lanes to get off. We had to get off at this one exit on the right, and it was a 2-lane exit. She was guiding me that was the exit we had to get off at. And as we're about to get off the exit, she has us pull over on the side of the road because she had to get out of the car and like sort something out. And then I'm like, okay, I'm just waiting there. And then she gets back in the car and we get off the exit together. And I was like, why is my brain insisting that I remember this? You know, like I was getting those nudges and I just wasn't listening, basically. So I wrote it down. Sure enough, the day and the time that we were supposed to meet up, she had texted me because she was having a terrible migraine. And she was getting on a plane the next morning to go back to where she lives. And she's like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it. Can we reschedule for this date? And I was like, oh my God, that whole dream was about rescheduling. We were on our way to meet up with each other, and then something happened that she had to take care of before we could get off the exit together. Could Spirit have made that a little bit more clearer? Yes. Could I have also listened a little bit more? Also yes. But I thought that was very cool in the way that all sort of unfolded.
I think also it's a great example for anyone who wants to understand how we do our intuitive readings. That's how it comes in sometimes. It's a metaphor. And we do our best to explain that to you, but it's not like we have all of the information to understand what a symbol may mean for you in particular. Sometimes when you have readings, as a little bit of time passes, all of a sudden something clicks because you understand with additional context what it actually means.
And I should clarify, I've never dreamt about this person. So the fact that I was dreaming about them, to me, was like, oh, this is important. But I just couldn't get it at the time. And here we are. All right, Renee, what do you got for us?
So I also had a short and sweet dream, mostly because there probably was more and I just couldn't remember when I woke up. But it was a story dream. In other words, I was not in it. I was just seeing a story play out. And it was following a newscaster TV anchor. They weren't on air, but she was talking with producers or her team, and they were briefing her on this segment they wanted her to do. And she was terrified because it involved her eating veggies while getting in and out of a coffin in the studio. And she, one, was concerned about that, but also was like, well, what are the kids going to think if they watch this? And that's all I remembered from this very short dream. In looking this up, newscaster, TV anchor can represent a lot of things. So it depends on like if you are that person, if you're seeing that person, if you're watching them on air. By themselves, a newscaster or TV anchor could represent communication, connection. And specifically in this scene, I felt like it was playing off of this idea of wanting to control how others perceive your messaging, because that's the role of the anchor, is they're trying to convey information in a way, like I was just talking about with the readings, that the viewer will understand. So the messaging is really important to them. The veggie piece represents making healthy choices or being responsible or even revitalizing the mind and body. For coffins, if you have an empty coffin, it represents letting go of what's holding you back and going through a transformation. And then the last piece for the children, how I thought to interpret this for decoding, was that she wanted to protect the kids. Well, what if the kids see this? And this can indicate protecting an inner child, emotions, or your habits, so what you're doing. And when we pull all of this together, it's thinking about your messaging, wanting to control how others perceive you or what you have to say, balancing that with, well, is it just a responsibility to share this message, or are you having unhealthy habits or practices in your day-to-day or as relates to trying to control the message? And you're being encouraged to let go of those controls, allow yourself to transform, to lean into the healthy habits. The thing that I was kind of unsure about is like with the protecting the kids, I want to protect my inner child, my emotions. I like my routine and my habits that I'm doing, but I should be having the vegetables. So the thing that was confusing about it is like, well, someone was telling her to do it and she didn't want to do it, but like, was she wrong? It would be kind of odd for her to get in and out of a coffin while doing this on TV. So on one hand, it's like, she's not wrong for thinking that. It is important to let go of what's no longer serving you, to have those endings, to be able to transform. And it's also important to protect that inner child, your emotional well-being, and to make healthy choices. This is my dream. This is something I'm supposed to be receiving. I'm talking about it like it's somebody else, because in the story it wasn't me. I have to make that decision because she was resisting doing this and I don't know the outcome. I don't know if she ended up doing this on-air segment or if she talked the producers out of it because I didn't get to see the resolution. If I'm being asked to think about my healthy choices, think about how I'm taking care of my body, we all know this as a pattern here, and being willing to lose, be willing to have endings in order to really facilitate that transformation, I can still protect the inner child in myself and what's important to me. I don't know specifically what this is referring to or how this will pan out, but it feels like a very big picture message.
What if you were a guide in someone else's dream? Because you can clearly see, like, you don't have to do what other people think. You don't have to say what other people need to say. You have to do what's best for you. Like, this is very clear for you to see, but obviously not the subject in the dream. So how cool would it be if you are actually a guide in someone else's dream?
Well, that would potentially offer an explanation for why do I consistently have dreams that I'm not in?
Right.
What if I'm just wandering into someone else's dream? What if I wandered into a newscaster's dream and this is like her nightmare that she has to do this segment? But for me, it doesn't feel like a nightmare because I'm just walking in and going, oh, this is interesting. But it's not triggering any of my fears, but it would for her. If there's any newscaster that's listening and has had this exact nightmare, that would be the craziest thing. Please let us know. Send us an email. For this week's reading, I'll kick it off. I was initially seeing shedding layers. I thought this was particularly interesting knowing when this episode is dropping. We will, in the Northern Hemisphere, be in the summertime. So taking off the layers kind of makes sense. Like, but it wasn't related to temperature. It was about revealing more of our souls. We're following our inner spirit and our light. And then I was cracking up because, wow, what a sense of humor. This sentence came in. We're sparkling like Edward Cullen on a sunny day. For anyone who's seen Twilight or listened to our bonus episode where we were watching Twilight and Anchorman, they have one scene in particular where Edward pops his shirt open a little bit, and the type of vampire he is, they sparkle. So that was what came through. But that's what we're doing. We almost have a glow and a sparkle about us. And right here, I was drawn to flip over my first card. So I'm using two different decks. This card is from the Moon deck, which are Oracle cards. It is the Purpose card. I have unlimited potential and claim my purpose. All I need is within me. One completely aligns with what we were just talking about. But number two, the visual on the card, which I'll show Christine, is a woman, and she's literally glowing. She has a glow around her. So it's capturing the same idea visually and through the messaging on it. We are in alignment. And when we are aligned with our purpose, with our sense of potential, our mission, we are quite literally lit up. It's like everyone can see it. We're flowing in joy and calm rather than being activated in ways that drain us. Now we're walking up to a wall and we're kind of looking at it confused. Like, where did this come from? Because we've been moving in a flow state. And this is being labeled as a waiting period. It feels really random and we're genuinely surprised. But what's happening is we are being forced to take a sacred pause. These are times of reflection, taking a beat, checking in on ourselves, and deciding on our next course of action. Plus, I love the alliteration that came through here. Whether we need to delegate, downsize, or detour. And the card that I pulled is from the Moonchild's tarot deck, Eight of Swords, which represents self-limiting beliefs and isolation. So it's picking up on some of the 12th house energy to bring in another modality, because that's what we're doing today. Going into isolation, you're really reflecting deeply on yourself, your soul, and your spirit, and you're preparing to move back into that first house where you are bringing something into the light of day. You are expressing it. You are embodying it. And this brief sacred pause feels like it's maybe a few weeks. And I got the note here that for those who choose to resist it or dig in their heels, she's like, no, I want to be in the flow state. I want to do this. I want to do that. I don't want to have a pause. Then it will last longer. Keep that in mind. And the mantra I received to close this out: with intention, I find my way.
I cannot wait to share mine because we read in two different ways, and I think we are heading towards the same endpoint. For the listener, after Renee and I record an episode, we take like a quick break and then we come back and we do our readings, but we sit with each other on mute while we're channeling. And for some reason, like I went off and I would do things and then get sidetracked and be like, oh my God, I'm still recording with Renee. And like, I need a glass of water. Oh my God, I'm still recording with Renee. And I'm like, I have to sit down and do this reading. So I like sat down. And as soon as I channeled into my psychic space, it's so foggy. It's clouds. And I was like, what is this? And I saw the word Pisces and I was like, I need help. So I pulled out my Mystic Mondays tarot deck, flipped a card over, and I got the Seven of Cups reversed. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go. It's all making sense. It's kind of the energy of like, be careful what you wish for. Like, there's a bunch of stuff in these cups that looks really great, but like, what are you actually pulling out of these cups? Or are your cups overflowing? Are you committing to too much? Things like that. With the card reversed, Neptune and Pisces, that's all I kept like feeling is like, great, right? That like you're using your imagination, you're being creative, and you're getting into the flow. I'm aware that this episode is coming out mid-August. I wonder if this is getting us ready for September, because it's about making sense of what is illusion and what is real. How many cups do I really need here? What cups can I let go of? There's 7. We don't need 7 cups. Maybe we only need 3. What is it that I actually want to focus on and move forward with into this quote-unquote new year? Now, September is always a new year for me. It's my birthday month, and in the Jewish religion, it's Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. I've always had many New Years in my year, and September is one of them. this mid part of August, it's like, okay, like let's wake up out of the fog of summer. What do we want to accomplish in the new year? And it doesn't feel like a heavy thing. Okay, now it's time to like come back to reality a little bit. Actually, maybe this is the mantra, what to choose and where to go, but sort of as a question.
Mine was about also finding our sense of direction. With intention, I find my way. The takeaway is that we're trying to figure out what to do next. You had started out your reading saying, oh, it's really foggy, like there's clouds. And I have fog and clouds in the back of both of the cards that I picked.
Oh my God, fascinating.
So between our two completely different decks, you were picking up something I can see on my cards, which wasn't the main messaging that I got from mine. Technically, what you were just sharing about Rosh Hashanah, we're both born around a new year.
We are.
So you would be born, I'm assuming, it's not on a fixed day. Aren't all the holidays kind of floating a little bit? Most likely you're having your birthday right before the new year. And mine, for the astrological new year, I'm always following it closely behind.
It's so interesting. New year, depending on like what you're following. That's why,
Right.
I mean, we were just on someone else's podcast yesterday and we were talking about like, what is time? It's kind of made up. Like, when is the new year? Is it March? Is it January? Is it September? I think it's whatever feels called to you.
Right.
I'm going to say we're both New Year babies. Throw everyone off. Anyway, listener, keep us posted because we are recording this in the past and we have no idea why this message would be so important for August. And we would like to know why.
Leave a comment and that can enter you in our raffle.
What a great idea. Yeah, leave a comment. And that way we kill like 3 birds with 1 stone. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more, the resources we used to prepare for this episode are listed in the show notes.
If you're curious to develop your intuition, we've partnered with the Nuurvana Be Light program to give our listeners a $500 discount on tuition fees. Email us for more details and we'll connect you with the founder, Deganit Noor.
Want to connect with us? You can reach me, Christine, at Channeled by Christine with 1 L on Instagram.
And you can reach me, Renee, at _read by Renee, or connect with us both via email at synergytosynastry@gmail.com.
Keep your spirit curious and your aura sparkling.
We'll see you when the stars next align. We did plan this. That's our tagline. Can't kick that planning gene.
I'd love to go with the flow, but what time is the flow? And are we wearing heels? And is there parking?
And where's the food table?
Who am I sitting next to? Will there be gluten-free options? Will I be in bed by 9 because I have a skincare routine? Okay.
I gotta get home to read my book. I'm addicted to it.
I literally cancel everything just to read my book. Oh my God. Okay.
We're really funny.
I know.